There we go. Well, so you're in charge of letting in now, are you, Martin?
Yeah.
Right. I'll just mute everybody, and then I'll just do the parish notices, and we'll get started. So yeah, Steve, as I said, is unavoidably detained, and no doubt we'll be catching up on record later, but he can't be with us today. Important stuff to mention, as you saw in the newsletter, if you read it, was this time of the year we do ask, if possible, if you could donate a few quid for the TSF, help us cover our running expenses over the year. That would be very nice. It comes under the heading of Friends of TSF, and all the details are on the website or in the newsletter we've just sent out. So we'll be very grateful for any contributions. Um, the next two meetings, and perhaps part of the third one, we're going to do a reprise of some of the papers that were read for the American Folklore Society conference back in November, which were very interesting, but the recordings of them were restricted to people who've been at the conference, so they're not really available for other people to view. So we thought it'd be well worth airing those papers again. So that'll be January and February at least. We're going to do four papers in each meeting, so we'll be starting half an hour early at 3:30 to make sure we've got time enough to get those in. Also, the Broadside Day in February in Sheffield. I think the call for papers is still open if anybody's got anything else to contribute. And obviously, start thinking about booking and going there. If you're planning to go there, that would be good. And similarly for the Manchester meeting on women and folk at the Portico Library in March, April. And I think that's about it, really. Can you think of anything else, Martin?
Can you remind me of the date in January?
The date in January is the 11th. Yep. Good. Right. Well, we've got three papers today from John Baxter, myself, and David Sutcliffe. John Baxter is going to start with a presentation about the Christmas Goose, or Goose, as you might sing it. And we'll hand over to David. To John, sorry.
I hope you
I'll
hear me
mute
all right.
myself.
I'm just setting up share screen now. Okay, so can you hear? Can you see the right bit? So Richard, you're muted. Can you hear me?
Mute.
Judy is nodding. I'll take that. I'll take that as good to go.
Okay.
Okay, so I've got some unfinished work here. It was suggested that you could bring stuff that you haven't finished, and soon as I may not finish this until the Bodleian is fully accessible uh, in terms of accessing broadsides, I thought I'd do it now. So I'm going to talk about change for a guinea. Uh, uh, right. So why isn't it moving on? Change for a guinea, which is also known as the Christmas Goose. It's Roud 3204. It's a song that's particularly sung in West Yorkshire and in Greater Manchester. It tells of an amorous encounter between a commercial traveller and a chambermaid. He gives her a guinea, and 1 year later, when he comes back to buy his Christmas goose for the next year, he's presented with a bouncing baby boy. And the song ends with, "Last Christmas, you so generous were, pray do not look so strange. You gave me a guinea, and well, I've brought you back your change." And this is an ending that quite often provokes smiles or at least laughter. Perhaps there's humour in the traveller getting a surprise when the baby is revealed, or getting his comeuppance. But I've often thought there's something slightly odd about the phrasing "change for a guinea." That it didn't feel quite funny by itself, and yet it is. So I've been exploring whether the phrase "change for a guinea" might have had other meanings in the 17th 18th and 19th century. Sorry, 18th and 19th century. But let's hear the end of the Christmas Goose as sung by Will Noble. So it's about a minute's worth of song.
All around the green wood, so I lie in the
I should say this is the chorus. It has nothing to do with
merry,
this song.
merry huntsman blows his silver bugle horn. Right speedily a tray was brought with eatables galore, and by that self-same chambermaid he kissed 12 months before. But nothing loth he raised the cloth whereon a heap was piled. Instead of eatables thereon was a big fat bumping child. All around the green wood, so I lie in the morn. The merry, merry huntsman blows his silver bugle horn. Enraged at seeing others laugh, what is this here, said he. Come sit ye down beside me, and I'll tell you, sir, said she. Last Christmas you so generous were, pray do not look so strange. You gave to me a guinea, and I've brought you back your change.
Okay, so that's how the song finishes. But I wanted to know more about this phrase "change for a guinea" and whether there was something odd about it. As a child of, I was about 3, I think, or whenever it was. I wasn't very old when decimalisation happened. I've never seen a guinea in my life, and neither probably have many of you. They went out of legal circulation in 1816. Well, a guinea was a gold coin used between 1660 and 1813. Its name came from the region of West Africa where the gold came from to make it. Its value fluctuated between about 20 and 31 shillings, according to the value of gold. It was fixed at £1, 1 shilling, 21 shillings in 1717. In 1816, it ceased to be legal tender. But it's still used, it's still commonly talked about today. Some professional fees continue to be quoted in guineas. Doctors, bookies, lawyers may charge in guineas, and some goods, racehorses, farm animals are bought and sold in guineas. But that's all you need to know about guineas for now. What about this phrase, change for a guinea? Well, the Victorians and the Edwardians were obsessed with verbal wit, or some of them were, and there are endless references in books about witticisms to a fellow called George Augustus Elwin, who was an English member of Parliament for 44 years without ever making a speech. So there's nothing that his entire reputation as a wit is based on contemporary descriptions of his conversations. So this is a description of an encounter with the beautiful Maria, Countess of Coventry. She showed him her splendid new dress. I should say it was blue, covered with large silver spangles the size of a shilling. And she inquired of him what he thought of her taste. And he said, "Why, you will be changed for a guinea." Laughter all round. But I think for me, that's the sort of the sound of the wind blowing through the branches of the trees. It doesn't seem to be particularly witty to me. Why is that funny? There's something about change for a guinea, which may be making it funny. 100 or so years later, in Greater Manchester, this tailor, based on Shude Hill, which is a very unsalubrious street behind the Arndale in Manchester still, but was the home of this tailor who advertised famously for the change for a guinea outfit. So the idea was that you bought a high quality outfit, but it still cost less than a guinea. So you got change for a guinea. And this was in the 1860s, there were hundreds of adverts talking about change for a guinea bargains. But it seemed to come to an end in the 1870s and 1880s, probably when prices went too high and they couldn't afford to sell bargains at change for a guinea. But that doesn't seem to help us with the song. There's still something about change for a guinea that's making them use this phrase. If we go right back to the beginning again, if we go back to 1732, which is a few years after the guinea was introduced, there was a publication called Tricks of the Town published. It's basically it's warning people from the countryside what could the awful things that could happen to them if they go to town and what they need to be aware of. And it describes an incident or a purported incident where a well-dressed gentleman traveling in a litter carried by two servants goes into a bar and demands change for a guinea. The barkeeper points out that it's a fake one, but the well-dressed gentleman answers with a volley of oaths, and words run thusly high until the chairman, that is the litter carriers, come in and ask of their matters, master, what does he desire? And someone else in the pub, which may or may not be a plant, says, look how posh this man is, look how well dressed he is. He couldn't possibly be trying to defraud you. You've made a mistake. Give him back his money and apologise, which the person did. So it was a con, famous in the early 1700s, for turning fake guineas into real coinage, and it's basically change for a guinea is basically shorthand for a contract, and was for the entire period when a guinea was being used. So in 1862, Henry Fielding describes a not dissimilar form of the contract. Swindlers would go into a public house, order a gallon of beer to some trusted neighbour, and someone would be waiting outside for the messenger boy, tell the messenger boy, well, we don't just need beer anymore and change for a guinea, we need a pipe as well. You give me the beer and the money, I'll be waiting for you here to take it to master in a few moments. And of course, the boy goes back for the pipe, having left the money and the beer with the con man disappears. And it was referred back to in Badcock's Dictionary of Slang in 1823 that a swindler is one who orders to a neighbouring house a pot of ale and change for a guinea, and mizzles with either. And mizzles in this instance means sneak off. So for nearly 150, possibly 200 years, the idea, the phrase change for a guinea was associated with a contract. So if you put that in the context of the sort of 19th, 18th, the people listening to some of these songs, that's what they were associated with. Change for a guinea, the phrase change for a guinea immediately brings up the idea of criminality, of a contract. And some other songs that people would have known at the beginning of the 19th century when these songs were circulating was what was a famous Charles Dibdin song, one of his songs that didn't pass into the folk tradition, called Change for a Guinea, which is about a landlord's daughter whose shoes are Morocco. I don't know, a landlord's daughter who tries to extract money from a sailor, and it also features in some versions of Ratcliffe Highway as well. Just to finish up on that, I probably should have said this right at the beginning. This was all new to me. I apologise if everybody already knew that Change for a Guinea had these associations. It certainly didn't for me. And one thing that's rather strange that I can't, the reason this work remains unfinished, is the precursor song, possibly the song that is changed that Change for a Guinea was based on. The original Change for a Guinea was I'm not disappointed. Right. Yes, the Brisk Young Butcher, which is Roud 167, which is a very similar song with the same plot, but it's changed for a sovereign. And consistently on all the printed versions I've been able to look for, the Brisk Young Butcher is asked for change for a sovereign, whereas our commercial shoveler who's at the corn stalks asks for change for a guinea. So they do seem to be two separate songs, but I would be cautious about drawing huge conclusions about the difference between a guinea and a sovereign. I'd be interested if that idea is news to folk or something completely familiar. But that's it. Change for a guinea. Questions, if you have them, are welcome. So I guess you raise your hand in the normal way using
Yeah. Do you want to stop the screen share, John? Let's. Yeah, there we go. Good. Right. Has anybody got any questions? I, for one, had not heard any of that before. I mean, I'd heard the song before, but I'd not heard any of that explanation before. That's quite new to me too. Have we got any questions?
It's fascinating stuff.
It was, yeah.
A great addition to our singing circles. Great, thank you.
And I sing the song, so that gives it an extra meaning.
Right. Well, we don't seem to have any questions for what I can see. So we'll proceed on to the next paper, which is mine. So I'll set up my screen share and make a start. I'll just mute everybody again. Right. Share sound. That one. Share. There we go. That one. From the beginning. So this talk is about Christmas Eve in Inglesham, which is a little village was in Berkshire. It's now in Oxfordshire, I think, which is just across the river from where I live. So that's how I came across it. And this is what happened. At some time in either 1914 or 1915, Alfred Williams, the remarkable song collector of the Upper Thames area, was invited to spend Christmas Eve with one of his most remarkable singers, Elijah Isles. Alfred Williams' affectionate tribute to a rather wonderful old man, which occupies the last 19 pages of his book Round About the Upper Thames, is a fascinating read and one of the most interesting insights into a traditional singer's world that I have come across. In this talk I will present briefly biographical details of Alfred and Elijah, and then read sections of his book while attempting to analyse some of the things that are going on. Alfred Williams was born in poverty in South Marston in Wiltshire in 1877. He was barely 5 years old when his father left his mother and his 6 siblings. Rudimentary schooling combined with work in the fields was insufficient to support his family, and he took up work in the iron foundry of the Great Western Railways Works in Swindon. During this period he took a correspondence course in English literature from an Oxford college, read the English and Latin classics, and his first book, Songs in Wiltshire, was published in 1909. But work in the foundry broke his health, and in 1914 he had to leave. But he was then able to publish his next book, Life in a Railway Factory, which was very, very well received by critics, but not the railway company. His book did not make enough to live on, and despite lobbying from his friends, he was not granted a civil list pension. Between 1914 and 16, he started collecting songs in the Upper Thames Valley, recording about 800, but unfortunately without tunes. He cycled, he claimed, 13,000 miles in the process. Some of the songs he published in the Wiltshire and Gloucester Standard newspaper, and later in his book Folk Songs in the Upper Thames. He served in the army in France and India, where he taught himself Sanskrit. But despite being a respected author, he barely scraped a living, partly from market gardening, and he and his wife both died in poverty in 1930. Elijah Isles was born in Lechlade, the son of Angel and Sophia, though they... Sorry, excuse me, I'll start that sentence again. Elijah was born in Lechlade, the son of Angel and Sophia. They moved from Lechlade to Coleshill shortly afterwards. He was briefly apprenticed to a baker in Highworth, but he didn't take to the trade and returned to his family home to work as an agricultural labourer, which he did for the rest of his life. He married in on September the 13th, 1851, Elijah's future wife, Anne Gibbs, baptised her daughter Sarah Ann in Highworth with no father's name. In February 1832, Elijah and Anne married in Highworth Church. Sarah Ann married John Lawrence in the name of Gibbs in 1874, but the earlier census records note her surname as Isles, and it's fairly sure that she was Elijah's child. Elijah lived in several places in the area, in Highworth, in Shrivenham, in Compton Beach and below the White Horse, and 1891 in Ashbury, the next village. After his wife's death, he lived with his daughter Sarah and her family, later settling in Inglesham, where he lived for the rest of his life. Sarah looked after him there until his death in 1917. In his entire life, he lived in an area of Gloucestershire, Berkshire and Wiltshire, about 10 by 3 miles in extent. Elijah worked as a labourer and carter until his move to Inglesham, when the 1901 census states he had no occupation and was on parish relief. He was 78 years old. Alfred Williams notes, however, that he continued to gather rushes from the river and make baskets and chair bottoms until he was well over 90. Elijah was becoming perturbed by the continuous bad weather that year, not because he was afraid of floods, because he knew the Thames in all its moods, but he was worried about missing his treat. He had been promised and was eagerly anticipating a special visit from Alfred Williams, one that should last a whole night without interruption. Grandfather Elijah had several old songs he wants to sing, 1 or 2 quaint rhymes he wants to repeat, and furthermore is very anxious to recite the play Robin Hood and Little John as acted by the Mummers when he was a boy. He considered it advisable to wait until Christmas, and so it was agreed. Local customs had been observed, children were going round the farms begging, displaying Swede lanterns. Then came Gooding Day, and finally the day before Christmas itself, and the date of the promised meeting. A little before 4 o'clock the sun had set, dropping down behind Luss Hill. The interior of Gramp's cottage was warm and bright. A fire of logs blazed in the chimney back, and a large lamp stood in the centre of the table beneath the rather low ceiling. Numerous pictures and photographs hung about the wall, and above them hung sprigs of holly and mistletoe, and some little boughs of ivy. Each of the visitors to the cottage had brought Gramp a small present. A few good things to eat, cakes and oranges, a piece of beef for Christmas dinner, several ounces of tobacco and a small flask of whisky. With all of these, Gramp was greatly pleased. Gramp was the hero of the hour. This he knew, though he tried to be natural and to conceal his joy at having the company present. So this was no ordinary song collection encounter. The singer himself has planned the meeting, has selected the repertoire and prepared the stage. The scene is now set. Suddenly, without warning, Grant burst into song in a clear ringing voice, and we all knew the time for festivity had arrived. He only sung one verse of the ditty. This was concerning two farmers who took refuge in the church porch during a heavy thunderstorm.
Says Marco, this rain will be gloriously found, and my heart is as light as a feather. It will raise up the dead folk that lie in the ground. They shall rise up and be joined together. God forbid, said old Pedro, that should be my lot. Oh, 3 wives snugly buried in this churchyard I've got. If it rains cats and dogs, I'll not stay in this spot. And he scurried home in spite of the weather.
Elijah starts to organise the evening. We'd better leave old Robin Hood till last, 'cause there's a longish piece of he. 'Twill take 2 or 3 hours to speak him off all in. After a bit of discussion, he proceeds to tell the tale of Father Bernard and Yallow Britches, the lawyer. Farmer Bernard was a bit of a loss what to do with himself, and bolts off to market. Walks and straits about the market, couldn't see nothing to attract his attention. Goes by old Yallow Britches' office. Farmer Bernard asks the lawyer for advice on how to get on in this world, and the lawyer writes out, never put off till tomorrow what ought to be done today, and charges him 6 and 8 pence. Later that day, his carter tells him that the workers were anxious to bring in the bit of wheat before us geese out. They do, and later a storm rolls in. Bernard says to his wife, it rains cats and dogs, missus. A double 6 and 8 pence the first night. Everyone else's weight has washed away, but not his'n. Oh, bad luck, it can't be prevented. Fortune, she smiles and she frowns. The man's best off that's contented, and mixes the ups and the downs. After this, the company suggests songs for Elijah to sing from his repertoire, from the mildly risque through comedy and a child ballad. He responds with, seeing as we've got a goodish company, I thinks we ought to have the healths first and drink to one another. At this point, his granddaughter and grandson and son were allowed to make some contributions in the form of short toasts, and then Elijah finishes with,
let him be merry, merry, merry there, while we're all merry, merry here. For who can know where he shall go to be merry another year, brave boys, to be merry another year.
After that, he claims the floor again. Have you all done? Suppose it's my turn now then. And he doesn't relinquish it again for the rest of the night. He sings Paddle Your Own Canoe, The 4 and 9, Blow the Candles Out. His next contribution is a very strange tale, entitled Parson Jinglejaw's Adventure. Jinglejaw is going on his rounds, visiting his flock. At the first house, he comes across Mrs. Wallops mending her husband's milk slops. She complains, I ain't done it right, I must pull it off and do it afresh. The parson answers that it looks like it was shot on with a blunderbuss, and says, them that sow, the same shall they rip, and you've got to rip that. At the second cottage he finds a circle of women and a child sewing. He says he has heard the child has sewn a remarkable bookmark, which is produced, on which is stitched, Fade me lambs. Jinglejaw says, how could the lambs feed you? It's feed my lambs. To which the child replies, you ain't got no lambs to feed. At this point, the women see Mrs. Wallops coming in and decide to put a pig in the cradle. Mrs. Wallops expresses a desire to see the baby, and on doing so remarks, just like his father. Jinglejaw comments that the pig may be like his father, but neither Mrs. Wallops nor I have seen the pig's father. And when you see the discontent this aroused, he said, the pig is probably like his father and the child is like his father. But I can see that Mrs. Wallops knows no more about the child's father, nor yet the pig's father, than a bull knows about his own father. at which point the parson gets thrown out and beats a hasty retreat. After that, Elijah starts straight into the song Pretty Peggy-O.
There once was a captain in Derby-O, and he was come recruiting, oh. But a pretty chambermaid his heart she betrayed, and she was called Sweet Peggy-O. The captain went to the foot of the stair. Come down, cried the captain, oh. For I to Killarney must now haste away, then bid me farewell, pretty Peggy-O.
After the song, Gramps remarks, and that put an end to his growing, and then recited a bit of a toast that goes with the song. The God of love his wanton power displays, and oft torments us in 1,000 ways, and yet on Peggy none can lay the blame, for not complying with the captain's flame. The next song is a very strange one. Gramp says, I was thinking about a bit of summat as used to sing at the time of the fast that they had by Act of Parliament a good many years ago. This fast was the National Day of Fast and Humiliation, proclaimed by royal authority and held on Wednesday the 24th of March 1847, to implore divine intervention in the Irish famine. Elijah would have been 23 at the time, but he still remembered 5 verses 69 years later. The verses are all a satire on the politicians of the time of the fast and their approach to it. Lord John Russell, the Prime Minister, ate a pig. Duke Nosey, the Duke of Wellington, ate a gun and a bushel of barley meal, and so on. And that's the way the politicians fast, eh? More discussions about songs follow. One of the young people requested The Bonny Bunch of Roses. Gramps wants to sing Barbara Allen or Woodman Spare That Tree, for which he gave up his dinner when I was driving the plough atop Banbury Hill up yonder. Eventually they agree it was time for Robin Hood, as time is on the wing, and he might not have the chance to perform it again for Alfred Williams. The folk play Robin Hood and the Tanner is fairly common in the Cotswold area, as can be seen on the map on the left. The large red circle represents Elijah Isles' version. The sketch on the right is a contemporary one of the Charney Bassett mummers performing the play in 1860, which is just 11 miles away from Ingleton. Here we go, Robin Hood and the Tanner. Give room, you gallants all, and give me room to rhyme. I'll show you an activity this merry Christmas time, an activity of youth, an activity of age, and such an activity you never saw before, nor acted on a stage. I am a tanner from Nottingham, my name is Arthur O'Brien. There's not a squire in Hampshire that dares bid me stand, with my long pikestaff on my up so high, I go ahead to clear the way. By 1, 2, and 3 I make them flee, and give them no leave to stay. As I walk forth one midsummer's morning to see the forest of Merry Sherwood, to view the deer that run here and there, it was there I espied Robin Hood. As soon as bold Robin gave me the spy, he thought fine sport to make. He pulled out a wand and bid me to stand, and thus unto me he did speak. Hold, hold, who art thou, thou bold fellow, that reigns so boldly here? I swear by my brief thou look'st like a thief, and thou art come to steal the king's deer. I'm the keeper of this forest, and the king has put me in trust, to look after the deer that run here and there, and stop thee, bold fellow, I must. Speak clear, my good fellow, and give better terms to me, for thee I correct, and thy neglect will make thee more manly. And if thou art the keeper of this forest, and hast such a great command, then thou must have more, for taking of store, before thou can make me stand. Hang on, turn 2 pages at once there. Whoops. I have no more for taking of store, nor have I any need, for here is my staff from another oaken graff, and I'm sure that will do the deed. Hold your hand, and let our quarrel fall, that we may get our bones to smash, and get no coin at all. What little proud fellow is this coming down the hill? And this is Little John. What the matter then, master? I pray unto me tell. To see you stand with your staff in your hand, I fear all is not well. This is a tanner that stands by my side, he is a bonny blade. Even now he swore he'd tan my hide like a master of his trade. He is to be commended, if the deed he can do, and if he is so stout, he and I will have a bout, and then he can tan my hide too. At which they fight for a time, until the last Little John strikes the tanner's knee. The tanner falls on one knee, and Little John cries out, Doctor, doctor, where bist thou? The tanner's wounded in his knee. Doctor, doctor, play thy part, the tanner's wounded in the heart. 4 guineas or £5, if this noble doctor can be found. See, sir, comes this noble doctor, I travel much at home. I carry good pills to cure all ills, past remedy and time to come. I am this noble doctor, with my courageous hand I can quickly purge the blood, I can cure this man or the other man if he's not quite dead. If you were to bring me an old woman 7 years dead, 7 years laid in her grave, if she can rise up and crack one of these golden pills, of the bound I'll be bound of £50, her life to quickly save. You must not think I go about as rag-shag quack doctors do, rather to cure than to kill. I go about for the good of my country, rather kill than cure. I can cure the itch, the pitch, the mollygrubs, and the pimple-pomples, all pain without and without. Mend a bee's broken sting, or a gnatfly's wing, and charm away shingles and gout. Break your neck and set it again. I charge you nothing for the pain. Horses I cure, bulls, poultry or pigs, they give me the name of Mr. Cleverlegs, for I've travelled through Ireland, England and France. Rise up, bold tanner, and let's have a dance. They tell me there's a grandest man goes tramping about by the name of Jack Vinney. My name's not Jack Vinney, my name is Mr. Vinney, a man of great respect and property. Could do more than you or any other man. I wonder what you can do then. I can cure a magpie of the toothache. Very clever, John, but I never knew a magpie with the toothache yet. What, first I wrist off his head and throw his body in the ditch, and he'll never have the toothache again. Now, as I was walking down street this morning, I hitched my toe on a wimble straw, fell over a barn, I saw the pigsty thatched with candlesticks. I knocked at the maid and the door came out, and she asked me if I could drink a crust of bread and cheese and eat a cup of ale. And I said, no thank you if you please, miss, and after that I fell in love with her, and said, Suppose that I should marry you, my pretty fair maid, with your red and rosy cheeks and your coal-black hair. Please yourself and that you may, kind sir, she quickly said, it's rolling in the dew makes the milkmaid so fair. And what should you do for wedding clothes, my pretty fair maid, with your red rosy cheeks and your coal-black hair? I cut my Holland milking smock, and that will make a pretty frock. It's rolling in the dew makes the milkmaid so fair. Suppose that I should run away, my pretty fair maid, with your red rosy cheeks and your coal-black hair. Of curds and cream I should not lack, and my sand-red cow would call you back. It's rolling in the dew makes the milkmaid so fair. Suppose I shouldn't marry you, my pretty fair maid, with your red rosy cheeks and your curly black hair. You can wait until you're asked, kind sir, the maiden said, it's rolling in the dew makes the milkmaid so fair. After the final song, Elijah sat back in his chair and lit his pipe. One of the young people explained, Is that the lot of Robin Hood? Oh, that's all, replied Elijah. But you said it would take 2 or 3 hours. Elijah objected when Alfred Williams stood up to go. I thought they was going to stop on a bit. Williams walked out into the moonlit night to find his way home to South Marston. He saw a black dog on the way and wondered if it was the Inglesham ghost that Elijah had warned him about. But old Elijah became so merry after my departure that he stayed up until after 2 o'clock, and it was feared that he would not go to bed at all. Even after he was put there, he kept singing and only fell asleep an hour before daybreak, to wake up again with the song when the postman's rat-tat came at the door, signifying the arrival of Christmas parcels and letters. That's the last we hear of Elijah from Alfred. Alfred Williams went to war next year and Elijah died in 1917. He's buried in the churchyard of Inglisham's 13th century church, although you won't find his grave because there was no headstone. Williams was very impressed with Elijah's abilities. His daughter told Williams that Gramps was dull of understanding. Williams refuted this in his writing, clearly admiring an old rustic of 95 who would still remember 53 songs from his youth, as well as talk intelligently about farm work, the locality, its history, politics, and even astronomy. He concluded that he was a really grand old man whose worth could not be overestimated. Elijah, from this account, is shown as a true performer. Other collectors talked about singers with wavering old voices. Elijah's in his 90s was as clear as a bell. His mastery of his material, his ability as a performer to keep the company entertained for hours. Alfred Williams did nothing on this account but record Elijah's bravura performance for posterity. There are very few good accounts of traditional singers performing from this period. There is a richness and a wealth of entertainment here. Stories, toasts, glees and songs, and an entire mummers play. What if more of the collector sing encounters had been recorded in this depth, as opposed to the rather bleak extraction of name, date and place, and a basic form of the tune? How much more would we know about folk performers' lives and their art? I cannot recommend a read of this book, and particularly the last chapter, strongly enough. It is easily accessible online. My copy is a print-on-demand facsimile, and there are many second-hand copies are available. I strongly recommend you read it. I'd just like to thank Matthew Edwards for his contribution of the Grumbling Farmers song, which he learnt from a version in Cheshire. And thank you very much for listening. Where's me? Oh. There we go. And if anybody's Martin's got a question. Do you want to unmute, Martin? Do you want to unmute?
I didn't have a question, so you're muted.
I do have a question just to confirm. That was very interesting. Thank you, Richard. You are muted now, by the way, Richard. So just if you want to answer me, you have to unmute. I'm just. Did you say that this is available online? Round about the Upper Thames. That's.
Yes, I think it is. There is a PDF copy on somewhere online.
Great. That's so interesting. Yeah, because it would be really interesting to look at some of those songs, especially the Christmas ones. I like the sound of them.
Yeah, it's
and the Robin Hood.
The book itself is more about country life than it is about folk song, really. But the last chapter is literally more of what I read out, and it's wonderful. I love it.
Lovely, yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, have we got any more? Any more for any more? Patience, are you? No, you waving. Right, okay. Well, in that case, we will move on to David Sutcliffe, who's an expert in Cecil Sharp, among other things, and he's going to give us a talk about carolling traditions. Are you okay there, David? Do you want to set up your chair?
Hopefully everybody can see that, and can you hear me?
Try that again. Yes, we can hear you. That's fine.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much, Richard. Hello, everyone. I live between Taunton and Yeovil in South Somerset, and I've been a community choir leader for just over 20 years now, with an interest in alternative carols, you might say. I'm going to start my talk with a quick look at Cecil Sharp's developing interest, one might say sideline, in Christmas carols, leading eventually to his folk carols book in 1911. There's the date there, December 1911. Then I will try to put his efforts into the bigger evolution of carol collecting and composing within the overall institution of Christmas. A big zoom out when I get there. It's a very overview talk, this. So of the 21 carols that he collected, they were really collected from random encounters with singers all around England. And he pieced the book together over many years, if you see what I mean. Now, if time allows, we may examine a few of these songs in detail. Pages and pages have been written on individual carols and geographic traditions. But as I say, I hope this will be an overview that you might enjoy. When he first went down to Somerset to stay with his friend Charles Marson, Reverend Charles Marson in Hambridge, he came across Christmas songs very quickly, although it was August time. His second song, for example, was a wassail song collected on the 22nd of August 1903 on a social visit to Drayton Village, the vicar there, Reverend Henry Quick. His elder daughter Mary, then 18, was soon to become a music teacher, and she must have learnt the wassail song, from the visiting wassail group that went out around the village in January every year. They still do. I was privileged to join the Drayton Wassailers this last January as they sang, "Wassail and wassail all over the town. The carpet is white and the ale it is brown," and so on. Sharp collected 23 wassail variant tunes, both apple wassails and visiting wassails. And he went back to Drayton to meet the wassailers in person in January 1909 just to check up and publish their tune in Folk Songs from Somerset Series 5 in March 1909. And the second Christmas song he collected was at a party at Hambridge Vicarage on the 23rd of December the same year, from Louis Hooper. There she is. And she sang the 12 Days of Christmas. The song had been circulating for decades on broadsides. There's the Angus family of printers from Newcastle. That's in the Bodleian Library. Sharp collected, in the end, 11 variants of this song and published Hooper's tune in Folk Songs from Somerset Series 2 in 1905. Frederick Austin, the musician, arranged the standard version that we sing today in 1909, where we have the big paused 5 gold rings. That's a standard, as it were, become the standard version of 1909, but it shows that the song was in folk circulation throughout the 19th century, really. Now, as we know, this humble song is a simple forfeit game for 12th night parties, a challenge to remember the correct order of the 12 presents. But of course, it references the 12 days of holiday or holy day that Christmas allowed. Now, in order to see how Sharp fitted into the long history of carols, we need to go back in time. I mean, really back in time. So please bear with me as we zoom out. The institution of Christmas really got off to a slow start. The Bible doesn't actually tell us the day or date of Jesus's birthday. It only features in 2 Gospels anyway, Matthew and Luke. The early church focused on Jesus's baptism, in other words, how you can join the sect, the new sect, and his resurrection, the unique feature of the new religion. And so the first actual record of December the 25th celebrations was not until 354 AD. And then 200 years later or so, the Council of Tours decreed that Christmas time should be 12 days to go from Christmas Day until the Feast of Epiphany, the coming of the Magi on the 6th of January. There's a cluster of saints' days to be observed in between time there. Just to say, this 12-day break was particularly seized upon in Northern Europe, where at that time of year, agriculture had ceased. The weaker animals would be slain so that you could feast on them and get through the frozen winter months ahead. In particular, later, in late medieval times, the Tudor kings promoted Christmas revels and celebrations, the Henrys in particular. Christmas was indeed a mixture of the secular and the religious. Always has been. So, in the quiet of monasteries and churches, medieval monks would compose special Christmas anthems in Latin. It's worth noting that the arrival of Franciscan monks in England in the year 1224 would have further stimulated nativity poems and songs. St. Francis of Assisi, if you recall, perhaps put more emphasis on the cradle than on the cross. And it was he who first instituted or started a manger reenactment scene with live animals in a cave in Greccio in Italy in 1223. In these early carols, it tended to be the case that the Blessed Virgin Mary was front and center of the carol. Meanwhile, ordinary folks carried on making merry with carols and dancing. The original meaning of carols is a song with dancing. So for centuries, then, we could say there's been a tension between respectable restraint and rude celebrations. The early carols were hand copied on manuscripts. Here's an extract from the Trinity Carol Roll of the 15th century, preserved in the Trinity College, Cambridge Library. So as you can see, hand copying, the staves are in place. There's no barring, but the notes are all clear, but it's all hand copied. There are a couple of carols from this carol roll, for example, in the New Oxford Book of Carols. When we get the printing press, 1476 in this country, we get our first words only carol book in 1521, which included the Boar's Head Carol. But it must be said that much early Christmas music in this country was disrupted by the dissolution of the monasteries in 1536. No more monks to copy manuscripts for you. The Protestant break with Rome damaged our carol, our stream of carols, as it were. But this continued in Germany and France. In Dulce Jubilo was a Latin-German song with a tune dated to about 1400, before it was translated as Good Christian Men Rejoice in 1853. Now, the Puritans have a bad press generally, I suppose, but it must be said that many regarded Christmas as unbiblical, and they saw Christmas as both pagan, an echo of the Roman Saturnalia festival, and popish, Christ Mass. The English Parliament actually banned Christmas by law in 1647. The Scots Parliament had earlier banned it, and in fact it was never repealed in Scotland until 1958, which is why the Scots never celebrate Christmas like the English do. But after the Restoration, Christmas could be resumed, and we get some early broadside printing. This is 1684, a garland of pious and godly songs, which features this short carol here. On Christmas night, all Christians sing to hear what news the angels bring. That is how old that text is. It became obviously known as the Sussex Carol, as collected by Vaughan Williams in Horsham in 1904. We can't do a talk on Christmas carols without mentioning the ever-present While Shepherds Watched. Between 1700 and 1782, because of its biblical text, While Shepherds Watched was the only Christmas hymn that was allowed to be sung inside Anglican churches. There we are at Luke chapter 2, Song of the Angels at the Nativity of our Blessed Saviour. Elsewhere, outside church, hundreds of local tunes were fitted to this original poem. Today's standard tune, if you like, While Shepherds Watch Their Flocks By, that is an old psalm tune from Winchester Old is its name, but it was actually only attached in 1861 in Hymns Ancient and Modern. So for 161 years, people were singing the wrong tune. Now, the Anglican churches may have been rather dull with psalms, and more psalms, but the nonconformists were much more keen to encourage congregation participation and singing. And so Charles Wesley comes along, Methodist minister, writing new hymns, including Hark the Herald Angels in 1739. Actually, the tune we sing today was borrowed from Felix Mendelssohn in 1855. So again, for 116 years, people were singing the wrong tune. More composed art carols then came along with the Victorian reinvention of Christmas. So we have Christmas trees, house decorations, Charles Dickens, the whole caboodle, and that new carols were needed. And here we go. I'll just let them come up one at a time. You can see the pick and mix approach of the Victorians. So the first thing to say is that in tune with Victorian ballad tradition, we often have a poem, standalone poem, that is set to music at a later date. So in the Bleak Midwinter, Christina Rossetti, not set to music till 1906, Gustav Holst and Harold Dark a few years after that. The second thing to note is the international aspect. German lyrics, as we know, Silent Night. But here we have American. 1, 2, 3, 4 of our carols are American in origin. Get that one there, not set to music for 25 years there. But if we take this thing, I think we do all know the story of the tune for "Oh Little Town of Bethlehem." The Reverend Phillips Brooks of Philadelphia went to Jerusalem on pilgrimage and came back and wrote this poem. And his organist, Louis Redner, then set it to music. And the tune in America, as our American friends will know, if I can sing it right, "Oh, little town of Bethlehem, how still we see thee lie." So that's the American. And whether Vaughan Williams didn't like that or wanted to find something else, he set it to the tune of the Ploughboy's Dream folk song, which is collected in Surrey from Mr. Garman in 1904. "I am a ploughboy stout and strong, as ever drove a team. Oh, little town of Bethlehem, how still we see thee." It's the same tune grafted onto the American text and smuggled into the English hymnal in 1906. I think that's very widely known. That just in passing, this is a wonderful website if you haven't come across it already, hymnsandcarolsofchristmas.com. So we have a hodgepodge of carols, composed carols, and we mustn't forget the folk carols that were circulating at the time as well. So we have anonymous, passed on informally, or through broadside prints. I'll talk about Holly and Ivy in a minute. Both these broadsides dated 1820, circulating in the Midlands. The Truth Sent from Above, Cecil Sharp collected a version in 1911 in Shropshire, but the tune that we mostly know is, thanks to Vaughan Williams, who collected this song from Mr. Jenkins in Herefordshire when he was collaborating with Ella Lever. The tune, if you don't know it, I'll just give you the first line. This is the truth sent from above, the truth of God, the God of love. Sorry, a bit nervous there, but I think you know the tune. Vaughan Williams put it into his Fantasia on Christmas Carols in 1912, and it's been purified and sung by King's College, Cambridge, and so on. But it's a folk song. It's a folk tune, rather. It's rather stock in trade songs. I expect you know as well as I, but I can think of two Somerset carols, folk songs that use that tune. One is Searching for Lambs by Mrs. Sweet, and also Geordie, which is in the Penguin Book of Carols, that was collected in Yeovil. Same first line, so it's a stock in trade folk song that now has become a posh song. So Cecil Sharp preferred, as we know, really to deal on an individual basis with singers. He wasn't so good in larger groups, as it were. But he did meet some carolers. In rural areas in particular, the tradition in the 19th century was that carolers might go out early on a Christmas morning while it was still dark, which explains why some of these early carols have sentiments like awake, awake, or arise and hail the sacred day, and so on. One just hopes that the homesteaders that were woken up so early in the morning appreciated the carols that were sung at them. Anyway, we've got this whole collection, this whole pattern of homegrown caroling, especially in the early 19th century. Many of you will know more about it than I do, but just to indicate that some of the village musicians, village waits might assemble. There might be family groupings. It's certainly in Somerset, where I live, we've got Oddcombe carols, Dunster carols. They're the Exmoor carols that were investigated by Bob and Jackie Patton. In Cornwall, we've got the living tradition of Padstow. Sheffield, of course, well, we've got Dr. Ian Russell's research into Sheffield village carols, and there's Padstow there. Some of these early carols have a kind of feel of sort of sub-handle fugues. One part comes in, then another part, and so on. So they were certainly of their time, but many of them hold up very well. Sharp himself was a bit cautious. Just read you what he put in his folk carol book. In several parts of England, I have found carols which are peculiar to certain villages, by the inhabitants of which they are regarded as private possessions of great value, to be jealously guarded and retained for their use. They are not traditional or folk carols, but the elementary compositions of simple musicians, very possibly of those who in the old days were members of the church bands. They are easily distinguished from the popular carol by the formal nature of the music and words, and also by the fact that many of them are written in parts. Some of these compositions are by no means without merit. The melodies, if not inspired, are usually strong and sincere. We might disagree with some of that sentiment, but that was his position anyway. So we have newly composed carols, combining with a few popular folk carols, compiled into a succession of carol books in the 19th century. Now, these were all in Sharp's library. So this is the preamble before he came along. So we have, first of all, just a list of 89 carols in print, no words, no tunes. So we know what was in circulation thanks to that book. And then we've got a few tunes from Davis Gilbert, who lived in Cornwall. The point to make here is that it was expensive at the time to print musical notation. It involved engraving onto pewter or copper in order to score your tunes. So all these early books are few tunes or just basically words only. But the technology changed in the year 1847 when Novellos worked out how to mass produce musical notation. So from then on, we have more tunes. The second thing I want to say about 19th century carol books is to draw your attention to the influence of the Oxford movement of the 1830s. The Oxford movement was an Anglo-Catholic movement to rescue or revive Catholic ritual and vestments, and also music, if possible, into the Anglican Church. As it happens, this book on the right, P.A. Cantiones, dated 1582. It was a rare Scandinavian book. It was brought back to England in 1853 and was seized upon because there were carols in it like In Dulce Jubilo, Gaudete, Gaudete, that was in it, and a very good tune that was added to the new lyrics of Good King Wenceslas. This is all part, I would say, of the Anglo-Catholic influence. As well as packaging carols up in book form, we also begin to get carols packaged up into services or festivals. So the first festival of 9 lessons and carols was at Truro in 1880, and the first BBC radio broadcast 1928. So how does Sharp fit into this long meandering history of carols? In his career, he collected 130 plus carol tunes in 8 counties, as indicated there. His book had 21 carols in it, and he decided to arrange them for solo voice and piano. For our American friends, when he did go to America during the World War I period, he did collect 4 versions of the Cherry Tree Carol, notably one from Mrs. Jane Gentry in North Carolina, 1916. But it was summertime, so maybe Christmas material didn't spring readily to mind. Anyway, he collected some carols after he did the book. He went not only to America, but he collected more stuff here, notably in Cornwall, Herefordshire. So what was he trying to achieve in this selection of carols to publish? Well, initially he just picked up carols randomly from individuals. This is Sailor Rapsy, who sang Come All Ye Worthy Gentlemen. He'd learnt it as a boy and sang it in the streets of the town. It's a variant of Come All, God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen. But it's in a major key, whereas God Rest You Merry Gentlemen is in a minor key. An interesting tune, I think. Vaughan Williams used it in Fantasia on Christmas Carols piece. I'll just let that stay up on the screen for a bit in case you want to wade your way through. You recognize some of them, I'm sure. I mean, Cherry Tree Carol is quite well known, and As I Sat on a Sunny Bank is in current circulation still. But some of them are a bit obscure. I don't know this carol. I've never come across it. Collected in Warhorn, is it pronounced, in Kent. I believe they have a carol singing tradition there. Somebody will perhaps correct me. I mean, also here, The Little Room from Shropshire. I've never heard of that carol. So carols come and go a bit, and some fade. Henry Thomas gave a couple of songs here in Gloucestershire, and William Bayliss sang his wassail song and another carol. Sharp had already printed all his Somerset wassail songs, so he printed the Gloucestershire one there. Something else to look at here is that Sharp actually interviewed some carol singing groups at Armscott, just south of Stratford-upon-Avon, and Lilleshall, if I pronounced it correctly, in in Shropshire. Just you might like to note that he was a fast worker, Sharp, because he picked these carols up only in October, end of, and by December they were in his book. So he did a very quick work on that. When he interviewed the carol singers at Armscott, Sharp wrote at one point, carols were learnt from when they were young, from an old man in the village. How he came by them, they did not know. Obviously not folk, but composed carols, probably late 18th century. Interesting story about this lady, Genty Phillips. She was one of the carol singers at Armscott, but she'd moved and gone up to Birmingham. Sharp immediately got on a train the very next day to go and find her. He was like that. Okay, perhaps if you've taken that in, we'll press on. So Sharp's perhaps most significant find was the Holly and the Ivy tune that we sing as a standard today. There's a collection of it, fair copy from Mary Ann Clayton at Chipping Campden, 1909. Sharp liked her tune, compared with the rather dreary French tune in D minor, which was the current, as it were, establishment version in Bramley and Stainer. The holly and the ivy, now both are full well grown. That's the tune for that. But we know as folkies, we know other versions like the Sandsday Carol in Cornwall, and the folk tune that is often sung, particularly in Yorkshire, I believe, but comes from Herefordshire. Oh, the holly and the ivy, now they are both full grown. I think we all know that tune. So boisterous stuff, but that's a good tune that he found in Chipping Campden. Another quirky choice, if you like, in his book is King Herod and the Cock, which is a miracle story, not in the Bible, but how King Herod is astounded when the roasted chicken in his dish springs back to life and crows. You deserve a bit of audio, so here it is.
There was a star in David's land, so bright it did appear into King Herod's chamber, and brightly it shines there. The wise men soon espied it, and told the king on high, a princely babe was born that night, no king could e'er destroy. If this be true, King Herod said, as thou hast told to me, this roasted cock that lies in the dish shall crow full fences 3. The cock soon thrustened and feathered well by the work of God's own hand, and he did crow full fences 3 in the dish where he did stand, and he did crow full fences 3 in the dish where he did stand.
Just to say, that's my son singing that in a home recording 20 years ago when he was 19, me on guitar. Hope you could hear some of it. I hope you hear it well enough. So I'm just going to summarize conclusions before I wind up. Thanks for your patience. he picked out carols that had not yet been published, and not it was some of them were a little bit off-piste, you might say. It was an incredibly busy time for him. He, in the same month, published other books and founded the inaugural meeting at the EFDS. So he's still working with solo voice and piano rather than choirs, which we know and love today, of the community choir movement. Vaughan Williams would do SATB later. So, question: were the days of the collector giving way to the age of the arranger? So we have John Rutter and so on, still making new carols, but the arrangements is what for choirs is what we seem to be set on for the rest of the 20th century and up to date. So it's a modest little book, you might say, sharp, but its contents do sometimes resurface. He did collect more carols, 20 in Cornwall, 8 in Herefordshire. He didn't publish any, which makes a bit of a pity, really, especially with the Cornish tradition. I've mentioned the arrangements in the Fantasia. Right, developments after Sharp's book, how he fits into the overall pattern. As I say, we get choral arrangements coming forward rather than solo voice stuff material. So there's Martin Shaw and Percy Dearmer. They a preliminary set of books, and then eventually the Oxford Book of Carols with Vaughan Williams, 1928. Just as a piece of interest for you, Percy Dearmer was a fervent Christian socialist who actually was a friend of Charles Marson, and was introduced to Cecil Sharp by Marson, and Dearmer became the parish priest of the Hampstead parish where Sharp lived. And so he not only baptized some of Sharp's children, but he actually officiated at Sharp's funeral in 1924. So in a strange way, I think a circle was closed there. But just thought you might like to know that tidbit of information. So we come right forward through the rescuing books, village carol traditions being rescued in the second half of the 20th century. A lot of research, particularly by American scholars, actually, into medieval manuscripts featuring carols. And the New Oxford Book is a main reference book for many people today. So that concludes my talk, ladies and gents. If you enjoyed my presentation, maybe you might like to buy a Christmas gift for a friend of my book on Cecil Sharp. Excellent value at £20, either from me or from the Ballard Partners. If you contact me, I'll sign a copy and send it to you. Merry Christmas, everyone. I did overrun a bit, sorry.
Excellent.
There's a lot in there.
No, it's excellent, fascinating. Good. Do you want to stop your screen share, David?
Yep.
And we'll just see. There's at least one hand gone up already. Patience? No?
I'm just applauding.
Okay. Right. Miss Vic, do you want to chime in with a question?
But it was a wonderful array. Thank you.
Vic, you're already unmuted if that's what you're looking for.
But we can't hear him.
How about that?
Yes.
Fine, we can hear you.
Sorry about that. Very sorry about that. Well, first of all, no, very, very good overall survey. I'm very pleased to know the original text on Christmas night. I did not know that, and yet it crops up a few times. It's not the Sussex Carol; it's a Sussex Carol.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's quite important because there are dozens.
Yeah.
The one thing, you're absolutely right. The Truth Sent from Above, which is a great tune. There's an old article by Bertrand Bronson on that, and he's got about 40 versions of that tune. It's well worth looking up.
Yeah.
My impression of Sharp, it was quite interesting the positive things he says about the local carols, because I think in conclusions he's even ruder about them. He doesn't like hunting songs. He doesn't like songs that these local carols, and yet of course they were the mainstay of a lot of British carol singing. We know that. The one thing I think it's also important is the large scale. In the 19th century, you get large scale broadsheets of carols, often printed on a bigger scale than the standard broadsheets, and they seem to come out every year. I'm not sure of the date range, but they're very. I think they're a mainstay, because these are songs you might forget over a year. But the fact these are reprinted every year is really important. And finally, just a point on Bramley and Stainer. Vaughan Williams said it was a great inspiration for him, because it did, as much as having some conventional tunes, it had some quite wacky older tunes in it, and with their interest of Vaughan Williams and Sharp and so on in the older types of tunes. I think Bramley and Stainer is an important collection and needs to be considered as such. But no, otherwise, it's fine. Just comments. Thanks very much.
Well, thanks, Vic. I think you have to think. I always think of Sharp as being perhaps rather serious about things and not so full of Christmas joy. So the balance between restraint and joy is one that perhaps he veered off to one side, but there we are. Yes, I think he did have a few positive things to say, but he just so believed in the anonymity of folk song. He couldn't accept that a composed song could then be taken up by the people and enjoyed, and therefore become folk by destination. He just didn't get it.
And that's an important difference between him and, say, Kidson, who did see those older composed songs as important in popular use and memory and so on.
Yes. Thanks.
Martin.
Thank you. David, excellent presentation. Thank you. I enjoyed that.
Thanks.
You've obviously spent some time with King Herod and the Cock. I wonder whether you can help with something that's puzzled me for a long time, and that's the question of the cock singing of the fences.
Yes, I know.
Sharp, in his notes to the song, suggests that it's converted to senses, which is what he actually put in his text. But that makes no more sense than fences, really. Have you got any theories on that?
I'm afraid I haven't. My son asked, the first thing my son asked me when he was learning the song and wanted to sing it, he sang it in some local churches as well, is, what's that mean, Dad, in that verse? And I'm afraid to say I didn't really have a good answer, and I quite agree with you. He changed it, Sharp, but I don't know quite that it helped at all.
No. The fences, of course, came from the original printed broadsides and so on.
Yes, but because of the confusion about F as a possible S, I think more research could be done there.
Good job for someone, not you and me, I guess.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And Judy.
And while we're on King Herod and the Cock, I've got a question that's perhaps a lot easier to answer. The cock thrustened,
Yes.
and the only other place I've heard that is in Kirkpatrick's song "Ranging the Woods," where it's used, but I don't know exactly what it means.
Well, I think it must be an old word that's gone out of circulation. I thought it just meant kind of yes thrust.
I guess I mean, if I ask AI, it says that they don't know any such word. Maybe I meant thrust, and it could be something like that. But I just wondered if anybody had more information on that.
I've just got Sharp's notes here. It says thrust. Oh no, I'm completely wrong. Thrust equals crowed, evidently a derivative of the Middle English thrush, which is Thrusch, which meant a chirper or twitterer. Oh, I was completely wrong there. No,
So he was getting ready for his fences then.
there we are. That's what Sharp wrote. So he must have done a bit of research, but it's never a word I've heard. It doesn't mean at all.
Yeah.
It means getting ready to crow.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
I very much enjoyed the talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
And George, you've got your hand up as well.
Thanks. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. I think it just means a thrush, basically. Somewhere locally, there's a place called Throstle Nest.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's my guess, anyway.
Good. Has anyone else got any other questions? Okay. Right, well, thank you very much, David. That was excellent.
Okay.
Catherine Ann has got her hand up.
Oh, right. Oh, sorry, you've got hand right rather than that. Yes.
Hi there.
Yes,
Sorry. I don't know if John Baxter is still there. But I was interested in the song. He was talking about the change of a guinea, and I'm wondering, because he only used a couple of verses of the song, if that's the same song I'm thinking of, that ends up he's the guy who's not given his change is also kind of beaten up in the bar. Is that the story? I've come across that song. I'm just wondering if it's the same song.
I think that's the other.
That's a different version, a different song.
Yeah, the ones based in Manchester at the Cornstalks may be a derivative of that earlier song or a rewrite. It's not completely clear, but I think it's the Brisk Young Butcher is a common name for that song, and some variants of that I think have that sort of fight in it.
But the one that you were singing, the one you were talking about, he just is given a song instead of his change.
There was the one I was given. He was given a baby instead of his change.
Oh, sorry, a baby, but the other one has a song as well. Yeah.
Yes, there is one with there's a remarkable breadth of songs that include this, some sort of swindle involving a change for a guinea.
Fair. Thank you, John.
No worries.
It's very interesting. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay. Well, I think we've sort of seemed to have come to a natural end, just about bang on time. So we'll call it a day there. Please, if you do get a chance, if you could remember the friends of the TSF, we'd appreciate that. Our next meeting's January the 11th. It'd be good to see you there. And in the meantime, have a great Christmas or whatever else you celebrate at this time of the year. And we'll see you soon. Thank you very much to the speakers as well. Okay.
Happy Christmas.
Cheerio. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Richard.
Mm-hmm. Oof. I can stop recording now, can't I?
Yeah.